Now we have discussed about the waste, different types of waste, how to manage the different types of waste like biomedical waste, solid waste, then hazardous waste. And in this presentation we are focusing on hazardous waste management by industry, because generally the hazardous waste is mainly generated in the industries, and that is why it is a special provision to manage these hazardous waste in the industry. And for that purpose there is a special rule prepared by the government how to manage these hazardous waste by the industries. So in general there are different steps to manage this hazardous waste compliance. So the first step is to identify the waste, that is evaluate the waste. Then second is determine generator size. So how much quantity is generated on daily basis, on monthly basis, quarterly basis, half yearly and yearly basis, so that we can easily and appropriately plan for management these type of hazardous waste. So that size is also important, as well as the characteristics of these types of waste is also important. Then get a hazardous waste ID number, that is HWID. So you have to take this hazardous waste ID number depending on the quantity and characteristics of that waste. Then get a license, pay a fee. Then you have to take the license from the government to handle, to transport these types of hazardous waste, because the solid waste management is different thing, the biomedical waste is different thing, and this hazardous waste is different thing. So generally in a common person they are not knowing about these types of waste. They are thinking that waste is waste only, but the waste may be in different category depending on their characteristics. And all these types of waste, that is if it is a biomedical waste, then it is should be collected, transported and treated by the biomedical waste management people only. And if it is a solid waste, then it should be managed by the solid waste management authorities only. And now it is, if it is hazardous waste, then that should be managed by the hazardous waste authority only, which is connected to the central government as well as the state pollution control board. The next one is accumulate hazardous waste. So you have to collect these hazardous waste from various types of industries from that AYDC area, and a specific hazardous waste treatment facility is created by the pollution control board, and we have to transport these hazardous waste to that particular site. Then treat or dispose of hazardous waste. So whatever the treatment required for that particular hazardous waste, depending on the characteristics as well as the quantity of waste, we have to select an appropriate method to treat this hazardous waste or to dispose the hazardous waste. Then manifest shipments of hazardous waste. So while transporting, while collecting, while handovering these type of waste, or even after the treatment of these types of hazardous waste, all these things should be reflected in the different copies, that is called as manifest. That is a document where from that document you can understand where from I have collected these hazardous waste, how much quantity is this, what exactly the characteristics of that hazardous waste is, and then who is the consigner, who is the transporter, who is the authorized person, etc. So all the data is given in this manifest, and there are 6 manifest copies having different color code for a specific purpose. Then plan for emergencies. So in case of accidents, in case of spillage, in case of leakages, in case of any type of emergencies happen while collecting, while transporting, while storing, while handovering these types of waste, or while treating these type of hazardous waste, then we have to plan a systematic emergency plan for that. Then train the personnel for collection, for transportation, for handling, for treating, and for disposal. So for all these purpose, we have to train the persons which are available in that particular area, and it should be a specific or special training for handling the emergencies. Then keep records of all these things. So if you are collecting, transporting, then storing, then treating, then disposing, then if you have handled, if you have observed any type of emergency, if you have observed any type of hazards, if you have observed any type of fire or medical issues, etc., all these things should be recorded in a specific form. So all forms are given in that rule. So these are the general steps to follow for hazardous waste compliance. Then what exactly the requirement and transportation of hazardous waste? When we are talking about the legal compliance or which is connected to the rules and regulations. In the previous slide, I have shown you a general or common guidance. Now it is a specific guidance. If the hazardous waste is generated in the industry, then that hazardous waste should be transported accordance with the provision of the rules which is made under the central government under the Motor Vehicle Act 1988. So all these hazardous waste, the collection guidelines, the transportation guidelines, the packing guidelines, the storage guidelines, the handling guidelines, all these guidelines are covered under this central government's Motor Vehicle Act 1988. Then the occupier shall provide the transporter with the relevant information in Form 11. So the occupier have to give the information to the transporter in terms of Form 11. So this Form 11 is available in that Act, and regarding the hazardous nature of this waste and the measures to be taken in case of emergency, and shall mark the hazardous waste containers as per the Form 12. So these numbers may change in future also, but you have to focus on the contents of this form. So this form is specially related to the information which is given by the occupier to the transporter. Now this form contains the information which is related to the emergency situations and the marking of the hazardous waste containers. So these are the specific provisions as far as the law is concerned. Then in case of transport of hazardous waste for final disposal to a facility for treatment, storage and disposal existing in a state other than the state where the hazardous waste is generated. Suppose if the waste, that is hazardous waste, is generated in Maharashtra and they are going to transport this hazardous waste to the Gujarat facility for the final disposal, then you have to obtain NOC, that is no objection certificate from the State Pollution Control Board of the both states. That is, in this example, from the Maharashtra Pollution Control Board facility and from the Gujarat State Pollution Control Board facility. So you have to obtain these NOCs from both the state. If you are transporting or transferring these hazardous waste from one state to another for the final disposal. In case of transportation of hazardous waste through a state other than the state of origin or destination, the occupier shall intimate the concerned State Pollution Control Board. So in this example, Maharashtra State Pollution Control Board have to consult the Gujarat Pollution Control Board that we are transferring or transporting this much of hazardous waste of these characteristics from this company, from this location to your this location and from this date and time, so that they can prepare to collect these hazardous waste, they can plan to treat or dispose these hazardous waste accordingly. Now we have referred some of the major guidelines from this Motor Vehicle Act 1988, which are the basic requirement of handling, transporting, storage, or disposal of this hazardous waste. Now this specific rule is prepared for this hazardous waste management, handling, and transboundary movement rule 2008. So this is generally called as hazardous waste rule 2008. So from this hazardous waste rule, it is clearly mentioned that what exactly the hazardous waste is. So the waste substance is a solid, semi-solid, or non-aqueous liquid which, because of its quantity, concentration, or characteristics in terms of physical, chemical, infectious quality, that can cause or significantly contribute to an increase in mortality or an increase in serious, irreversible, or incapacitate reversible illness, or pose a substantial present or potential hazard to humans or the environment when it is improperly treated, stored, transported, disposed, or otherwise managed. So from this hazardous waste rule, it is clearly mentioned that the substance may be a waste substance which is solid, semi-solid, or some non-aqueous liquid, whatever it may be. So depending on their quantity, concentration, characteristics, that may be a physical characteristics, chemical properties, or infectious properties. So from that properties, that may be a single property or the combination of all these property. If it is going to harm a person, if it is going to harm health to the persons, if it is having the potential hazards to humans or to the environment, then it is called as hazardous waste. So these hazardous waste or the waste having the following characteristics. So in case if the waste is having only corrosivity property, then it is also called as hazardous waste. So there are different characteristics of this hazardous waste: corrosivity, reactivity, ignitability, acute toxicity, infectious property. So let us discuss one by one these properties in a brief. So this corrosivity. So the word is the property which is related to the corrosion. A waste characteristics, a waste exhibits the characteristics of corrosivity if a representative sample of the waste has either the following properties: any liquid which has a pH less or equal to 4 or greater than or equal to 12.5 as determined by the standard test procedure. So this clearly shows the corrosivity properties of that substance, that is depending on the pH parameter. So P stands for potence, that is nothing but the strength or the power, and this H stands for hydrogen ion concentration. So the strength of that hydrogen ion concentration of that particular chemical is called as pH value, and generally it is ranging from 0 to 14. So 7 is the neutral state. When it is in between 0 to 7, then it is called as acidic nature, and if it is more than 7 and less than 14, then it is a basic nature. So when we are talking about the pH value less than 4, means it is a strong acidic substances. And when we are talking about the pH value more than 12.5, means it is a strong alkaline substances. So we require a neutral substance that is generally in between 6.8 to 7.2 value. So if the pH value is 6.8 to 7.2, then it will be considered as a neutral substance. So which is not adversely affected on the humans or on the environment. But when we are talking about the strong acidic range and strong alkaline substances, so normally they are the corrosive substances. A waste which can corrode steel at a rate greater than 6.35 mm per year at a temperature of 55 degrees Celsius as determined by the standard test procedure. So we have to check the corrosion. So normally it is on the metal, and when we are talking about the steel, so that may be a mild steel, because normally the stainless steel and a specific type of stainless steel are not corroded due to these substances, but generally the basic steel or mild steel is corroded by the corrosive properties of that substance. So if it is the corrosion rate is greater than 6.35 mm per year at a temperature of 55 degrees Celsius, then it can be determined by the standard test procedure, and we can say that this substance is corrosive substance. Then reactivity is another property, unstable and undergoes violent change without detonations. That is called as reactive substance. So if it is, the substance is very unstable, it is not stable with the environment available in that area, and if undergoes a violent change without the detonation, then it is also called as reactive substance. Sometimes some substances are highly reacted with water, like sodium substance, like calcium carbide. If these substances are reacted with water, if it is contacted with water, then exothermic reaction is occurred and the temperature is going to rise. If the temperature is going to rise, generally the rate of reaction is also going to rise. So these substances are also called as reactive substances. Then potential explosive mixture with water. Sometimes these substances, when mixed with the water, they are having the explosive potential. It means depending on the condition, depending on the quantity, and depending on the environmental conditions, sometimes explosion may happen when these substances are reacted with water. That is also a reactive substance. Then toxic gases, vapors or fumes generated of CN or S minus waste. So that is also called as reactive substances. So in case of some toxic gases, vapors or fumes are generated, then it is also called as reactive substances. Then some substances are explosive characteristics. So these substances are also called as reactive substances, because explosion is the higher hazard. So if there is a chances of explosion due to that substance, then it is also called as reactive substances. So these are the different characteristics or the outcomes which is clearly showing that these substances are the reactive substances, and the property or the characteristics of these substances is called as reactivity. Then ignitability. So ignitability is the property that is comes from the ignition. So ignition means which can cause the fire or the spark. So waste with flash point less than 60 degrees Celsius, that substances are possessing this property that is called as ignitability. So if the temperature is less than 60 degrees Celsius, and if the waste can catch this flash or fire, then that substance is called as ignitable substance, and that property is called as ignitability. Then there is another property, that is toxicity. A solid waste exhibit the characteristics of toxicity if the leached from the representative sample by TCLP test method as followed by the US EPA. If it is shown that this substance is toxic, then that substance is called as toxic substance, and the property is called as toxicity. So depending on the number or the output of this test, we can say that this is low toxic substance, medium toxic substance, or it is a high toxic substance. So if the toxicity is at severe level, then we have to avoid, we have to isolate, or we have to adopt a special treatment from these toxic substances. So for that purpose, we can refer these US EPA guidelines, or we can refer the IS guidelines for testing these types of substances. So we have to measure the LC50 value, LD50 values, TLVs, etc. for getting these types of outcomes. So that is nothing but the lethal concentration, then lethal dose or threshold limit values. So depending on the characteristics of the substance, depending on the physical state of the substance, we can observe these types of outcomes. Then acute toxic. So the waste generated in the manufacturing process, generally when it is halogenated phenols and other halogenated compounds, then it is having the characteristics of acute toxic. So whatever the waste generated in the industries, if it is halogenated compounds, then you can say that it is having an acute toxic property. Then pesticides. So to kill the pest, we are using these substances. So pesticide or their derivatives are clearly acute toxic substances. Then halogenated benzene under alkaline conditions, which are also acute toxics, and off specification or discarded products from the above processes are called as acute toxics. So these acute toxic substances are specific substances, especially are clearly mentioned as halogenated compounds or phenols, pesticides and their derivatives, halogenated benzene and alkaline conditions, and the discarded or the waste product from all these compounds also. If it is the manufacturing process which are having these types of substances, so all these substances or discarded products are having the property that is acute toxic. Now we will discuss in brief what exactly this hazardous waste rule 2008 contents are. So there are various schedules and forms under this hazardous waste rule 2008. So schedule 1 is having the importance of hazardous waste streams, that is 115 hazardous waste streams are there in 36 industrial processes. So there is a list of these different types of industrial processes and hazardous waste streams in schedule 1. Then there is a class of these hazardous waste. So list of waste constituents with concentration limits are mentioned in the schedule 2 in the categories, that is class A to E. In the schedule 3, part A and B. Part A is related to the list of waste applicable for import and export, and part B is related to the list of hazardous characteristics. So the waste which is applicable to import and export is mentioned under part A of schedule 3, and the list of hazardous characteristics is mentioned in the part B of schedule 3. Then schedule 4 mentions the class of A to E, list of non-ferrous metal waste applicable for registration for recyclers. So if it is a non-ferrous metal waste and if it is applicable for the recycling, then we can go for the registration of recyclers. So what are the conditions? All these classes are mentioned under this schedule 4 of this hazardous waste rule 2008. Then what are the responsibilities of the generator? So the organizations or the persons who are generating these hazardous waste are called as generator, and these responsibilities of this generator for handling this type of hazardous waste are mentioned here. So generator shall be responsible for safe and environmentally sound handling of hazardous waste generated. So we have to take care about the adverse effects while handling this type of hazardous waste, and that adverse effect to the human beings or to the environment. So we have to handle in a safer way these type of hazardous waste. The hazardous waste generated shall be sent or sold to recycler or reuser or an authorized disposal facility. So depending on the characteristics of waste, if the hazardous waste is recyclable one, then we can handle this hazardous waste to the authorized recycler, which is a term mentioned by the central government. Then we can, if reuse these type of hazardous waste, then we can handle this type of hazardous waste to the reuser. And if it is not recyclable, not reusable, then we have to treat this hazardous waste at a authentic hazardous waste facility, that is a disposal facility. So we have to handle this hazardous waste to that authorized disposal facility. Then generator should give information to hazardous waste treated and disposal of by the operator of a treatment, storage and disposal facility as determined by the SPCB. So whatever the norms or the rules and the guidelines given by the State Pollution Control Board for treating this type of hazardous waste, for storage of this hazardous waste, for disposal facility, for disposing this type of hazardous waste, all this information should be given by the generator to the operator. Contain contaminants and prevent accidents and limit their consequences on human beings and the environment. So it is responsibility of the generator to avoid the accidents while handling these types of hazardous waste. In case of any accident, then they should try to avoid the consequences, the adverse effect on human beings and the environment. Provide persons working on the site with training, equipment and the information necessary to ensure their safety. So these are the hazardous waste, that is a special type of waste, and these hazardous waste handling, storing, disposal, all these things required a special training, right? So it is not the general training which is given to the solid waste or the biomedical waste. It is a hazardous waste, so a specific training plan should be there by the generator and that should be executed in the training program. So whatever the equipment is required to handle, to store, to transport these types of hazardous waste should be provided by the generator. So these are the different responsibilities of the generator for handling the hazardous waste. Then grant of authorization for handling hazardous waste. So you have to take the permission for handling these types of hazardous waste. So every industry who is engaged in generation of hazardous waste shall require to obtain an authorization. The hazardous waste shall be collected, treated, stored or disposed of only in such facilities as may be authorized by the State Pollution Control Board, right? So there are different facilities which is authorized by the State Pollution Control Board, right? So for the region, for the different regions, there are different facilities. So like in this region, here MEPL is the authorized facility which is permitted by the State Pollution Control Board, that is from the Maharashtra Pollution Control Board. Now for the Mumbai region, there is a different facility, and likewise for different regions, there are different authorized hazardous waste management facilities. So all these facilities are permitted by the State Pollution Control Board, and depending on the quantity, depending on the characteristics of the hazardous waste, they have to sanction these types of facilities to the different locations. Every industry who is engaged in generation of hazardous waste or occupier of the facility shall make an application in Form 1 to the SPCB for authorization within a period of 60 days from the date of commencement. So we have to apply to the SPCB in Form 1 for getting these authorizations that whoever the hazardous waste is generated, the occupier can apply for these types of facilities. So this is the form 1. So this is the form 1. Rule number 5, 3 and 7. Application for obtaining authorization for collection, reception, treatment, transport, storage, disposal of hazardous waste. So I'm not going to discuss all the details of this form 1. You can understand from the title itself that this is the application for obtaining the authorization for collection, reception, treatment and transport, storage and disposal of these hazardous waste. So on receipt of the application complete in all respect, that is form 1 for authorization purpose, the SPCB may, after such inquiry on being satisfied to handle hazardous waste safely, grant within a period of 120 days. So if you are going to apply this form 1 for getting the authorization for handling this type of hazardous waste, then SPCB may go through your form, go through the facilities which is already created or going to create for handling these types of hazardous waste. So within a 120 days period, they can communicate you about this the authorization. So in form 2, the applicant which shall be valid for a period of 5 years. So SPCB, that is State Pollution Control Board, can give you the authority for handling these types of hazardous waste in form 2 within 120 days after the application submission, and that period is maybe for 5 years. Every industry authorized under these rules shall maintain a record of hazardous waste handled by him in form 3. So whatever the records for this hazardous waste handling is there, all should be recorded in form 3 and prepare and submit to the SPCB. So you have to prepare these records, that is in form 3, and that should be submitted to the respective State Pollution Control Board. An annual return containing the details specified in form 4 on or before the 30th day of June following to the financial year to which that return relates. So you have to submit the annual return, that is in form 4, before 30th June of every year. An application for the renewal of an authorization shall be made in form 1 60 days before its expiry to the SPCB. So after 5 years, you can again apply for the renewal within the 60 days in the form 1. So these are the different forms for different purposes. So this is the form 3, that is with reference to the rule 5 of 6 and 22 of 1, format for maintaining records of hazardous waste by the occupier or operator of a facility. So these are the different details regarding this hazardous waste, that is the physical properties or chemical properties or the forms and their volumes or the weight and their description, etc. So these are the different points which is covered under this form 3. So you can go through details of disposal of hazardous waste, then the data on environmental surveillance, then the details of hazardous waste solid, auction to. So these are the details of form 3. Then this is form 4, which is with reference to the rule 5 of 6 and 22 of 2, form for filing annual returns by the occupier or operator of facility. So whatever we have mentioned, before 30th June of every year, we have to submit this annual return form in the form 4. So these are the details of this form 4. That is name, address of the generator, operator, etc. Then the contact person, their description, then hazardous waste description, that may be in the physical form, chemical form. Then the quantity of that hazardous waste may be in liters, kiloliters, or in meter cube. Then the storage, description of treatment, details of transportation. So whatever the mode you are going to use for the transportation purpose, for the packing purpose, for the date of transportation, then the details of this hazardous waste, that may be the details which is similar to the point 7, and the quantity of useful materials sent back to the manufacturers and others. So all the details are given in the form 4. Then the storage of hazardous waste. So the occupier, recycler, reprocessors and reusers may store the hazardous waste for a period not exceeding 90 days and shall maintain a record of sale, transfer, storage, recycling and processing of such waste and keep these records available for the inspection. So you can store these hazardous waste for 90 days if any case you are having the problem or the hazardous waste quantity is very less, then you can go for the storage of this hazardous waste, but that should be not exceeding the 90 days period. Provide that SPCB may extend the said period in the following cases. So if you want to extend these 90 days limit, then you have to communicate to the State Pollution Control Board and you have to take the sanction of extending these 90 days period for storing this hazardous waste. So you have to provide this information, that is the information which is related to the causes or the reasons to extend the 90 days period. Small generators up to 10 tons per annum. So if you are having this small generators capacity, then you can go for the extension. Recyclers, reprocessors and facility operators up to 6 months of their annual capacity. Generators who don't have access to any treatment, storage, disposal facility in the concerned state. If you are not having this facility, that is disposal or treatment facility in your state, then you can extend this 90 days period of storage. The waste which needs to be specifically stored for development of its recycling and reuse. So if a special need is there by storing these types of hazardous waste for development of its recycling properties or the reusing properties, then you can also go for the extension of the storage period. Then the packing and labeling guidelines. The generator shall ensure that the hazardous waste are packed based on the composition in manner suitable for safe handling, storage and transport as per the guidelines issued by the Central Pollution Control Board time to time. So we have to follow these Central Pollution Control Board guidelines for packing of this hazardous waste. Then the labeling and packaging shall be easily visible and be able to withstand physical conditions and climatic factors. So we have to follow all these guidelines which is provided by this CPCB for the packing and labeling. Then the transportation of hazardous waste. So for this purpose, we have already discussed the TREM card concept in a different presentation in the different video. The transport of hazardous waste shall comply to Motor Vehicle Act 1988. The occupier shall provide the transport with the relevant information, that is in form 11, TREM card, that is transport emergency card, regarding the hazardous nature of the waste and the measures to be taken in the case of emergency, and shall mark the hazardous waste container as per form 12, that is marking of hazardous waste containers. So we have already discussed the details of this transport emergency card, which is also having the contents like which type of hazardous waste in that container or that tanker, in that truck, then how to handle this type of hazardous waste in case of any accident, in case of any leakage, in case of spillage, in case of fire, in case of explosion, etc. Then what is the United Nations number or the unique number for this type of waste. Then what is the class label or the symbols available for these types of waste, if it is applicable to these type of hazardous waste, etc. All the details are given in the form 11 and the form 12. So this is the example of this TREM card, which contains characteristics of waste, type of waste, physical properties, chemical composition, exposure hazards, first aid requirements. So in case of any accidents, then you can go for this first aid requirement, which is clearly mentioned for that type of hazardous waste. Then this is used TREM card, which is filled TREM card by that particular company of that state. Then this is form 12, that is marking of hazardous waste, having the contents like waste category number, total quantity, contents and state of the waste, sender's name and address, phone, email, telephone, fax number, contact person in case of emergency. Please contact to that particular number, that is emergency numbers. Then manifest number, then waste identification, then compatible group number, date of storage, receiver's name and address, then phone number, email ID, telephone number, contact person, contact number, etc. Then UN classification number for identifying this type of chemicals, which is unique number. Then from this unique number you can identify the different physical, chemical or reactive characteristics of that chemical. Then state of the waste, aqueous, solid, organic liquid or tarry. So all these details are given in the form 12, that is hazardous waste marking. And this is the field form 12, that is a sample. And then we have to discuss about these manifest. So when we are going to handle, when we are going to transport these hazardous waste as per this hazardous waste rule 2008, and when we are following this Motor Vehicle Act 1988 for handling or transporting these types of hazardous waste, then there is a system that is called as manifest system. So what exactly manifest system is? It is a movement document to be used within the country only. So whatever the hazardous waste you are going to carry or you are going to transport from one point to another point, so whatever the documents you require which gives you the details of that hazardous waste, that should be used within the country. So that document or the movement document is called as manifest system. So the occupier shall prepare these 6 copies of the manifest in form 13, comprising of color code indicated below, and all the 6 copies shall be signed by the transporter. So in manifest systems there are 6 different color copies of this manifest in form 13, and all these copies should be signed by the transporter. So we will check what exactly these 6 colors are and what are their significance. So this is the manifest system, clearly mentioned the number of the manifest and the color code of the manifest. For example, this is 1. So this is the manifest copy number 1 and the color is white. So if the document is white color, it is clearly showing that what is the purpose of that white document is. So it is to be forwarded by the occupier to the State Pollution Control Board or the committee. So this document should be forwarded by the occupier and that should be given to the State Pollution Control Board or the committee. Then copy 2. So that is number 2 manifest having the color yellow. So this is clearly showing the significance or the importance. To be carried out by the occupier after taking the sign on it from the transporter, and the rest of the 4 copies to be carried by the transporter. So this yellow copy should be carried by the occupier after taking the sign on it from the transporter, and this is the white copy is given to the SPCB. Now the yellow copy is carried by the occupier. Now the remaining 4 copies should be carried by the transporter, right? So these remaining copies are 3, 4, 5, 6. So copy 3 is having the pink color, that is to be retained by the operator of the facility after the signature. So this pink color indicates that should be written by the operator. Then 4 is orange color, to be returned to the transporter by the operator of facility or recycler after accepting the waste. So when this hazardous waste is going to accept by the facility organizer or that recycler, then this orange copy is there. So to be returned to the transporter by the operator. Then 5 indicates green color to be written by the operator of the facility to SPCB, that is State Pollution Control Board, or the committee after treatment and disposal of the waste. So it is to be written by the operator of that facility. So after treatment or after disposal of that hazardous waste, so this green copy should be submitted to the State Pollution Control Board or the committee after the treatment. So green indicates that the treatment or the disposal is completed. Then 6 number is blue color, to be written by the operator of the facility to the occupier after the treatment and disposal of the hazardous waste. So it is clearly indicates that the cycle is completed. So from the occupier to the occupier. So this is the first one, that is to be forwarded by the occupier and to the SPCB. Now after completion of the treatment and disposal, which is communicated to the State Pollution Control by the operator of that facility, now the SPCB or the operator is going to communicate to the occupier again that all these guidelines are followed and the treatment or the disposal of this hazardous material is completed. So from occupier to the occupier, this is the complete cycle which is indicated through this manifest, that is the movement document. So these are the different examples or the samples of these manifest of different colors. So we have already discussed the significance or the importance of this document, who is going to handle, who is going to carry this copy 1, copy 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So this is the flow chart which is showing the movement of these documents having different colors, that is called as manifest systems. So we know that the State Pollution Control Board is the main authority, then the different operators, occupiers, generator, transporter and waste disposer are the elements for this movement documents. So this is the form 30 of this manifest documents. So you will have the idea what exactly the form 13 is. It is related to the rule number 21 of 1, hazardous waste manifest, information of hazardous waste for disposal, right? So there are different elements like details of the occupier, then details of the transporter, then the facilities details, then the transporter description of waste, their quantity, characteristics, and vehicle details, then the facility details, manifest number, then some additional information in case of emergency, how to contact, where to contact, all these details are given under this form 13, that is manifest document. Then this is the field form 13, that is sample of this manifest document. Then criteria for acceptance of hazardous waste to that authorized site where this hazardous waste is going to treated or disposed. So the generator should provide information on through inputs, the process that generates the waste with quantities, physical and chemical characteristics of the waste, analytical procedures and interpretation of these results, hazardous waste codes as per the schedule 1 and 2. So all these information should be provided, because whatever the test facility, whatever the analytical procedures, whatever the test results, all these things should be informed to the generator, to the occupier, to the state pollution control board as well, because we have to identify the remedial solutions for these types of waste, or for minimization of the quantity of these types of waste, or the severity or the hazard of these hazardous waste. So there are different requirement regarding the membership, then the agreement finalizations, characterizations or CA generation, pollution control board authorizations essential for transportation, and some regulatory documents are also needed. This is the criteria for acceptance of hazardous waste to that authorized site. So this is the flow pathway of waste, which is already discussed in one of the video, that is hazardous waste management. So we have discussed all these elements in detail in that video, that is hazardous waste management. So I will go through quickly from this pathway. So this is the comprehensive analysis of waste, then waste acceptance criteria, then decision on disposal, then collection and transportation, then waste retrieval at site, then manifest, then weighing and recording of this waste, then waste tracking forms, waste sample collection, temporary storage, fingerprinting analysis, that is FA facility, then waste confirmation, then whether it is reusable, recyclable waste, or it is should be sent to the landfilling, then whether it is landfill after the treatment is required or not, or whether this waste is only for the incineration purpose. So depending on the characteristics of that waste, we have to send to that particular facility. So this is the simple pathway how this waste is characterized, analyzed, tested by these facilities. Then we have, after identification of the type of waste, we have to generate the manifest systems. Then with the help of these documents, with the help of this authorized transporter, occupier and the generator, we are going to follow these guidelines, that is weighing, recording, etc. And then after the waste confirmation, we have to send these type of waste to the different facilities. So this is the comprehensive analysis, that is physical, chemical and other property check. That is in the physical properties, the physical state, color and texture, flash point, LOD at 105 degrees Celsius, LO at 550 degrees Celsius, calorific value, paint filter, liquid test, liquid release test, etc. are included. In the chemical analysis, pH, reactivity, cyanide, then reactive sulfide, sulfur, concentration of inorganic as per the schedule 2, then in other than the physical and chemical, extractable organic fractions C, H, N, S, individual organics as per schedule 2, then TCLP characteristics, organics and inorganics. So all these characteristics or the properties are checked under this comprehensive analysis. Then under FPA facility, that is fingerprint analysis. So this shall be performed by the operator of that facility, that is physical state, color and texture, pH, loss on drying at 105 degrees Celsius, loss on ignition at 550 degrees Celsius, flash point, calorific value, paint filter liquid, reactive sulfur, reactive cyanide, chemical compatibility, other parameters on merit basis. Then criteria for acceptance of hazardous waste for direct disposal to secure the landfill as per the guidelines which is given by the Central Pollution Control Board and Ministry of Environment and Forest. So depending on the leachate quality like pH, if the concentration is between 4 to 12, total phenols less than 100 mg per liter, arsenic, lead, cadmium, chromium 4, then copper, nickel, mercury, zinc, fluoride, ammonia, cyanide, nitrate, then adsorbable, organic bound chlorine, and their concentration respective. So we have to check all these Lichet concentration with respect to these parameters, and then water soluble compounds except salts less than 10%, calorific value less than 2500 kilocalorie per kg, then strength in terms of transversal strength when testing, then unconfined compression test, then axial deformation, degree of mineralization or content of organic materials, then annealing loss of the dry residue at 550 degrees Celsius, then extractable lipophilic contents, oil and grease. So all these parameters are of Lichet quality. So depending on the concentration, we have to accept these hazardous waste for direct disposal to the secure landfill. So this is the disposal pathway what we have discussed. So depending on the waste characteristics and their criteria. So this is one of the criteria that biodegradable organics, if it is less than 5%, or non-biodegradable organics if it is less than 21%, and calorific value if it is less than 2500 kilocalories per kg, and if it is non-toxic, then it should be sent to the direct landfill. So this is depends on the type of waste, the characteristics and the criteria of this waste. If the criteria is different one, if the biodegradable organics having more than 5%, if non-biodegradable organics more than 20%, and the calorific value is less than 2500 kilocalorie per kg, which are having toxic characteristics, leachable compounds, metals, etc., then that type of waste should be sent to the landfill after treatment. If the criteria is that the calorific value is more than 2500 kilocalorie per kg, then that should be sent to the dual chamber incineration. So this is the double incineration and operating at 800 to 1200 degrees Celsius temperature. So depending on the characteristics or the criteria of the waste, we have to send these types of waste to that appropriate treatment. So this is called as disposable pathway. Then the ingredients for the stabilizations, that is sodium silicate, then bentonite fly ash, alkaline chlorination for cyanides, sodium sulfide for mercury bearing waste, and these are the different ingredients for the stabilization. That may be gypsum, lime, rice hull ash, cements, etc. So for the waste treatment or the stabilizations, which is carried for all the waste identified for the purpose to minimize their contamination, leaching potential, stabilizations could involve immobilization of the leachate material by fixation as non-reactive solids, reduction of volume, reducing the contaminant level of organic or inorganics. So to reduce the contamination, to reduce the volume of that hazardous waste, and to fix as the substance as a non-reactive solids, we have to go for the stabilization process. And this is the liability of occupier, transporter and operator of a facility. The occupier, transporter and operator of facilities shall be liable for all the damages caused to the environment or the third party due to the improper handling of the hazardous waste or disposal of the hazardous waste. So Central Pollution Control Board and Ministry of Environment Forest has already given the guidelines how to transport, how to operate, how to handle, how to treat, how to dispose of all these types of hazardous waste. They have also given the guidelines how to test these types of hazardous waste, what are the different criteria, what are the different characteristics of this hazardous waste, and depending on the criteria and the type of characteristics, we have to send all these types of hazardous waste to an appropriate facility for the disposal or the treatment. But in case if it is not followed, or due to improper training, or due to some emergency situations, or due to some unsafe act and practices, if it is happen that some possibilities are there that there may be a case that adverse impacts on the environment or to the human beings, then that is the responsibility of that occupier, transporter, or the operator, depending on the case where it is happened. Then the transporter, occupier, and operator shall be liable to pay financial penalties as levied by the CPCB for any violations. So all these guidelines are given in the Central Pollution Control Board guidelines and some State Pollution Control Board guidelines in their rules, that these are the financial penalties for that particular causes or the damages to the environment or the persons. So these are the liabilities for this occupier, transporter, and operator. Thank you. So I hope you understand the different facilities, different rules and regulations, and the guidelines given by the State Pollution Control Board and the Central Pollution Control Board, the different criteria, different pathways, how to handle, how to collect, how to store, how to pack, then how to treat or dispose the hazardous waste. Thank you.